Hello, everyone. Dr. Stillman here, joined by my friend Jim Laird. And today we are going to be talking about our overall philosophy of health wellness, which I like to talk about as natural and holistic health. That's what I put on my business cards because I think those are arguably the two best words to describe what I do. But I think these words get used a lot in the health info space. And I wanted to sit down and kind of frame the conversation so that people understand that not everything that is natural is good for you. And not everyone who says that they're holistic is going to give you recommendations that are right for you. So, Jim, let's talk. And I want you to sort of respond basically to what I just opened with, because we both are on the same page about this. Where do people go wrong with these words in your world? And how do you get them to think about these concepts so that they don't hamstring their goals?
Well, if we look at a human being as an organism that has to adapt to a very complicated environment, right? Basically, this all comes down to your body's ability to adapt to a stress, okay? The sun can be positive, it can be negative. Water can be positive, it can be negative. Oxygen can be positive, it can be negative. You can have too much oxygen, you can have not enough oxygen. All these things, blood pressure in context is, I ask this to my clients all the time. Is high blood pressure bad? Yes. Well, what if I'm chasing you with a machete? Okay, then it's actually good, right? Is low blood pressure good?
That's right.
They're like, yes. And I'm like, not if I'm chasing you with a machete, right? So everything has context. And what I like to look like, I tell people is like, it's a bathtub. Basically when that bathtub spills over the top, you've exceeded your body's ability to adapt to the environment. Okay. And what can we do to basically build more resiliency, empty your bathtub so you can handle more stress? Or you can look at it in a different ways where you have a fixed budget every month. And that budget, so much of that budget goes towards reproduction. It goes towards maintaining your nervous system. It goes towards maintaining your cognitive function, right? And we can add to that budget by sleeping and doing all these positive things, getting enough sunshine. Too much sunshine might take away from that budget. Right? Too much sunshine might overfill the bathtub, right? Too much isolation because you're worried about EMF and you're living out in the middle of nowhere, but you have no social interaction. You have no EMF, but you have no social interaction, could actually make your bathtub overspill.
That's right.
So our job as professionals is basically to look at people, look at what's going on in their life, figure out what we can do to empty their bathtub so they can survive if they have a gluten exposure, it doesn't spill the bathtub over. They can survive, they found out their mother-in-law's goldfish died and that caused a huge amount of stress for them. So we're trying, and we can use like cardiovascular activity to raise resiliency. Cardiovascular activity can lower resiliency. So it's a matter of picking the right tools and giving the right dose of what we're looking for to basically build a more resilient human.
Right. Yeah, and so that concept, you use the bathtub in the medical literature, that's known as total allostatic load. And this concept is really well described. And for a long time, in medical school and residency training, I felt like they didn't really teach me how to think about this. They talk, and a lot of influencers and doctors and other people out there in the health info space, they talk about things this way. They say, the cause of this is that, and the reason that you're having this is that. And the reality is that the systems of your body, I look at it very much as being like a car. When something is actually noticeably wrong with your car, it's smoking, it's making a funny noise, it keeps driving off the road to one side, you name it. That is not the beginning of the problem. That is the culmination of the problem. Signs and symptoms are the same way. When we, Jim or I go through with a patient or a client, depending on if you're working with Jim or with me, the reality is that we're constantly going to find things. We say, okay, well, this could be causing or contributing to all these other things. And it's never one thing. This is something that I think people get really married to. And I never really know, if we fix your light environment and we get you more sun exposure and you start eating more of this, that, and the other food, are we going to get 100% or an 80% improvement? We never really know that. And part of why, I talk this way, frankly, with patients, is I see them falling into traps of thinking, oh, if I just do everything naturally, that will fix the problem. But it's way more complicated than just natural. I've seen people overconsume every kind of natural product in the world. The typical person coming to me, who's probably you watching this video, you've got organic, GMO, soy-free, gluten-free, dairy-free shampoo, conditioner, mouthwash, you name it, right? I've still had patients with allergies to their perfectly organic, nice, highly expensive sometimes skincare products. So it's not just about natural. It's about understanding all these stresses in harmony and in context, which is why it's not only helpful for us to talk to you about your diet and your lifestyle from the standpoint of what you're doing and know you're doing. It's also really helpful for us to get the labs to actually quantify what you're doing, because in our modern world, we're so far out of nature, even if you're living a very natural life. I mean, and I joke with patients that the short version of what I do is really simple. Sell all your worldly possessions, move to a tropical island, and eat a local seasonal diet rich in fish and shellfish. This will give you a very nice nutritional profile in your diet. It'll be varied. It'll be diverse. You're unlikely to get food allergies. You're unlikely to have autoimmune conditions. You're unlikely to get occult, infections. You're unlikely to have headaches, fatigue, all the other problems that our patients come to us with. But funnily enough, not a lot of people take me up on that. So then it's a matter of, okay, managing our lives in this very unnatural world and interacting with nature and creating a lifestyle that's natural in a way that's still balanced with the unique constraints of modern life with its technology, which creates a lot of stress itself.
But it's not going away. I like to explain it to people as everybody's a science experiment. Like we don't know. I can't say with 100% certainty that if you get up every morning and view the sunrise, that's going to fix all your problems.
Yeah.
But from my experience, that definitely is a big part of the equation. And here's the thing: a lot of these habits, the big rock habits that we look at, is basically it has a ripple effect, right? So you throw the stone in the pond, and it basically ripples and has this side effect. So say, let's use light. That's a popular one today. Say you go outside every morning for 10 to 15 minutes. It resets your circadian clock. It's easier for you to go to sleep at night. You start sleeping better. All of a sudden, your hormone profile starts to improve. All of a sudden, you're not craving as much alcohol and you're not craving as much junk as you were. So you start eating better. You stop drinking as much because you're not needing, because you're not craving. You're not sleep deprived anymore. Your sleep improves, your hormone profile improves, you've got more energy, you start going to the gym. So that one habit spilled over into all these different things. So I think people basically get overwhelmed with I've got to change 10 million different things. Right. We've got to pick one or two and get consistent with them. And we got to figure out which ones are the big rocks for you. Like the car analogy you just said. Okay, so my tire is, shaking when I'm driving down the road, so the first thing we check is, do you have your tires balanced properly, right? You check the shocks and the struts. And then, if that's all good, then you look at the frame. Is your frame bent? So you just go through this checklist of things, and then you keep experimenting and you try different things until you figure out. And some people, I hate to say this, but I'm going to be honest, the bell curve, there's some people that no matter what they do, like Dennis Rodman, who played in the NBA, was, super all-star, partied all night, did drugs, alcohol, had all sorts of wild times, and would go play in a playoff game the next day and lead the league in rebounds, and then would do a 2-hour workout after the game. And he did that for his whole career, the whole career. There's people down here on the tail end of the curve, and I hate to say it, that no matter what they do, they're never going to get better, right? But the majority of the people in the middle are going to respond to very basic things that are done consistently. And that's what we have to do. We have to get these habits and basically get them consistent, and then get habits that are basically not going to cause stress for you, because a lot of people will start doing this stuff and that actually causes stress in their life.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line of, and some people that have extreme health issues like I did are going to be willing to do more extreme type things. So it's a matter of figuring out what works best for you. And then, with our combined experience, I've got 20 plus years of talking to people about this stuff, and you've got all your years of experience. It's a matter of guiding people into what they can manage and change, and figuring out what works best for them, instead of just trying to kind of throw crap at a wall and see, let's try this supplement, let's do this. Well, I talk to people all the time. They're like, well, I'm tired all the time. I'm going to start this crazy exercise program. Well, how many hours of sleep do you get a night? Well, I get 4 hours. Okay, well, no wonder you're tired. Like, you don't need to start exercising more. You need to get your sleep in order first, right?
Yeah.
So, that's basically what it is it's basically what can we do to make you a more resilient human? And if you're healthy and you've got, all your resources are being used to keep yourself healthy, the chances of you having autoimmune diseases, all these other issues are much less, right?
And there's a reason that I put content like this behind a paywall. It's because these simple fundamental habits don't get airtime in the health and wellness info space.
Well, they don't sell.
It's because they actually don't just sell. They put a hole in the boat that is a lot of the integrative medicine and functional medicine and whatever you want to call it, natural, holistic, alternative bandwagon. And it's real, but it's really interesting to work with people actually using these concepts because you will quickly find the people who failed, not necessarily because they didn't do enough, but because they did too much. And figuring out what the problem is very much a matter of figuring out what actually needs to be removed from the equation. Frequently, that's something natural that someone is using. So I like the word natural because we do want to copy nature. All in all, that is, and that's a catchphrase from a guy named Jonathan Wright, who said it years ago before I was born. And he's one of the luminaries in functional medicine, one of the original pioneers of things like bioidentical hormone replacement. And that is something that I keep coming back to with people, which is what does nature do? And you got to understand that sometimes small changes have large effects on long time scales. And that goes for both the system breaking down and building it up. So to go back to the car analogy, one of the things that I've observed in patients is that, to use the wheel or flat tire or cracked whatever axle, analogy, if that happens to your car, you'll realize, okay, well, I can't really steer this thing or drive it as fast as I was. I better get off the road and get to a shop to figure out what's going on, right? And you also realize, oh, wow, I need to take it easy. You need to stop doing things and driving the car really as hard. The same thing happens with illness. People say, wow, I can't go out and drink past 11 p.m. anymore, or I wake up with terrible abdominal pain and a headache and whatever. What they find, though, once we make some small corrections to their lifestyle, their diet, their exercise routine, all of a sudden they're able to get away with things they didn't think they'd be able to get away with ever again. That's the presence of wellness rather than just the absence of disease. Not saying you should go out and overindulge all the time, because certainly that is how you get back into the problems that you come to us with, and that you obviously want to avoid. But the system, as things start to break down, and this is how it works the other way, is if you do drive the car harder and you say, you know what, it just sounds kind of funny, I'm not going to worry about it. But then you just keep pushing the accelerator, and then all of a sudden the car smells funny, and then all of a sudden it's smoking, right? The more things are going wrong, the more things are going to go wrong. And so, when the biggest mistake I see people making is they say, oh, I just have a little rash. And then all of a sudden the little rash is joint pain, and all of a sudden it's headaches, and all of a sudden it's weight loss. Like, not weight loss like you like, weight loss like, whoa, I'm still have
my hair's falling out.
Yeah, fat mass, but I'm losing muscle mass. And that's how people get into real trouble. And that's something that we actually see with plenty of natural things on board. And that's where people need to realize they've got to get serious about asking better questions about what natural means and paying attention to the details. And that's where small corrections make a big deal. Like, changing rotating your tires is like an imperceptible change to your experience as a driver, but over a long period of time, it has this big effect. I use sometimes the analogy of B12 to illustrate this. When you look at the amount of B12 in the human liver in a healthy person, it's about 9 months worth of B12, which means that when you stop eating adequate amounts of B12 for you today, you may run out in 9 months. In 9 months, you may think that the reason you're sick is that you ate too many scallops or you didn't eat enough green beans. I don't know. You'll blame it on all kinds of stuff, and it has sometimes nothing to do with that.
Or your vitamin D reserves ran out too.
Yeah, and those tend to run out no matter.
That happens to a lot of our vegan, vegetarian friends. they feel amazing for a while, and then all of a sudden their body starts running out of resources because they're not getting enough fat soluble vitamins or whatever else.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
everything tanks, right? They feel great for a while. I think the big thing too is people don't understand that sickness is a teacher, right? When the warning light comes on in your car, our society is like, oh, you're tired, you don't feel good. Well, you got to suck it up and go, like take an energy drink and freaking push, right? You know, I talked to people. I was talking to a girl the other day that had her gallbladder removed at like 16 years of age, right? And I was like, look, girl, this is like an autoimmune disease, okay? They pulled it out. We'll have to deal with that. Talk to her about some digestive support. She's doing phenomenally better. But I'm like, girl, you got to get a hold on this and make some changes, or else you're going to end up with another autoimmune disease, right? You get one autoimmune disease, you're probably going to get another one unless you make some changes in your life. And she took that very seriously. You know, and she realized, she's like, yeah, this is like a shot across the bow. Like something in your life is not going well for you. The body's giving you these warnings. You know, your tires rattling in your car. You just don't like hit the accelerator and drive it faster and hope that it goes away. You got to take your body. And that, I get that with people exercising all the time. They're like, my shoulder hurts, or I'm having chronic pain, or I'm constantly exhausted. I have to turn the music up and I need somebody to yell at me to train. Your body's telling you to stop. Will you listen? That's the key. Like, and all these little things that you're having, your body is giving you these warnings, is a wake-up call to be like, okay, maybe I need to look at myself, like as far as my chronic, you know, stress levels. Like, what are my stress levels like? Are, you know, am I going through a ton of stress right now? Well, maybe I need to back off on my HIIT training for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do more walking. You know, what's my resting heart rate? You know, what's my blood pressure like? Like all these things we can track. I use the Oura Ring. It gives me HRV. It gives me all, like, what's my respiratory rate? Like we can look at these things that's like, you know, like having, you know, tachometers on your car and different gauges. These are indicators we can look at. And if you're trending up at all of these, you're going to need to make some changes. So if you take sickness and you actually embrace it and you look at it as a teaching tool, your body's trying to teach you a lesson, it becomes a lot more positive. And it's helped me get through a lot of my health challenges. Okay, what is my body trying to teach me that I'm not doing very well? And then you got to go back to the owner's manual, right? And you got to look at some lifestyle things. You got to look at habits. You got to look at your stress. And you check off a few of these things and you kind of experiment and you tinker, and then you see if you see improvement, right? I've been working with a guy recently who is HRV. So HRV, the higher the HRV, the more parasympathetic you are, the more the ability you have to shut off your nervous system, right? The guy's resting heart rate was like 90 to 100, okay, which is basically he's sitting there revving his engine all day. He sits in front of a screen all day. His HRV was 10 out of 200.
Yeah, it's
okay?
terrible.
So he was exhausted. He was drinking about 9 cups of coffee a day. So we cut back on the coffee. We started doing easy walking. He was doing HIIT training. He started getting out in the mornings, getting his lights off at night. 3 weeks, his HRV's up to 40, and his resting heart rate is now in the 60s, okay? In 3 weeks, just from doing some simple things. And we could measure it because we could see it, right? So that's the kind of approach that needs to be taken, is like, okay, what's your symptoms? What do you got going on? What's your life look like? And let's pick a few things that are like, all those things for him were easy adjustments to make to his lifestyle that are sustainable for him, right? And it's made massive improvements. So we'll check in another couple of weeks and see if he's, you know, still on the same path, and see if he wants to up at another level, right? But he's gotten himself from, and a lot of people I see, because of chronic stress, have a high respiratory rate, a high resting heart rate. They've got low HRV. They can't turn on their parasympathetic state so they can actually recharge and rebuild their body. They're constantly in this state of holy shit. When you're in a constant state of holy shit, you're surviving, you're not thriving. And if you run in survival mode for too long, the wheels are going to come off the wagon. I mean, that's just, you can get away with it for a long time, and I did, but eventually the wheels fly off.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I've noticed is that many people approach natural medicine without, first of all, understanding where they are in terms of their nature and their environment. So they think, okay, I live, or I, you know, should be able to do this, that, and the other thing as far as my exercise tolerance, my performance in the bedroom, the boardroom, at work, any of these metrics. I say this, it's natural for me to be able to do X or Y or Z. but they forget that it's unnatural for them to live in the 30th story of a high rise in a mega city, constantly on Wi-Fi all the time, staying up late at night, partying, working, just browsing the internet is going to have an effect on things like your circadian rhythms if you're not careful with your light environment. And so we're making these logical jumps that don't really work and don't actually pan out, and thinking I should be able to do this because I was able to do this back in college when I was in a completely different environment and my body was totally different because it was 10 years younger than it is now. Or I should be able to do what grandpa whatever did because, I have the same genetics as he did and he was a robust man who, lived out in the woods. We have to be mindful of the environment and how unnatural it is. And many people are totally unaware of the unnatural stresses on their body that render them unable to do what people consider to be natural. However, this thinking leads people to pursuing natural medicine, not as a search for the root causes of their illness, but as an enablement to continue to do the things they consider to be natural that are not actually natural. So you'll see this trend, particularly in the health and fitness world, where people will over-exercise and they're trying to be super people. They want to be the fastest time in the HIIT workout. They want to be super mom. They want to be the successful career mom, and they want to be super wife. This is unrealistic. And I've seen it derail a lot of women's health. I could go through the exact same example for men, because the reality is that people need to be mindful of just how much gas they have in the tank, how much physiologic reserve, that's the technical term, they actually have for all of this stuff, and have respect for the fact that there's unnatural forces in our environment now, from cell phones to artificial light to, that all can trigger, by the way, things like dysfunctional breathing mechanics, which can also be brought on by allergies, which can be brought on by air pollution, which can be, the result of not taking care of your house. So there's all these other factors. And like I was saying, one of the things people will do is they'll say, well, in order to be able to continue to burn the candle at both ends, I need to buy more wax. And that wax winds up being something like bovine adrenal glands or ashwagandha or echinacea or any number of adaptogens or mineral products or supplements. And again, this is why this is behind a paywall. There are a lot, or HRT. Yeah, exactly. And so this is why this is behind a paywall. It's hard to talk about this on podcasts because it'll get you canceled. But when you're working with us one-on-one, we need to be frank and honest with you about it, because if you don't have this context, you're set up to fail. And that's frankly a great business model, but neither Jim or I wants you to fail. We'd much rather that you get better, move on, send us your friends and family who are still struggling with the how failed the current.
There's plenty of people out there that need help. We don't need reoccurring. we don't need you to be dependent on us for the rest of your life.
We don't, yeah. So let's talk about the word holistic. This is the other thing that I think people get really caught up on and confused by. And my experience with this is that holistic, it's funny, it was actually coined by this South African philosopher to talk about trying to take into account the totality of the system. And I think that's a really important concept for patients to understand, because people don't realize that things are similar but not the same. It's like vitamin C and vitamin E is a good example of this. So vitamin C and vitamin E are both antioxidants, but they work in different biochemical pathways in different ways. And vitamin E is fat soluble and vitamin C is water soluble. So I may see a marker for low vitamin C levels on someone's labs, and I may see a marker for low vitamin E levels on someone's labs, and I may see a marker for high levels of free radical damage in their system on the same labs. That you can't use vitamin C to fix a vitamin E problem, and you can't use vitamin E to fix a vitamin C problem, but you can use either one potentially to fix a free radical problem. This is the same thing as basically saying, okay, your car is not running properly. Is it the tire that's blown out? Is it the axle that's cracked? Or is it the spark plug that's on the fritz, or maybe the alternator's out? I mean, it can be any of those problems, but fixing the problem that it is not does not fix the problem, right? If you have a flat tire and you replace the axle or you put in a new alternator, this is not going to make the car run better.
And that does happen.
Yeah, right. And it's funny because people will say, well, I'm doing the stuff that I did to fix this problem before, but it's not working. And I say, well, wait a minute. What else haven't you thought of? And I'm really encouraged when patients have the insight to say, Dr. Stillman, I'm looking for your help because I must be missing something. because what I've been doing and what I know to do is not working. And frequently, always, we get into the other parts of their environment, their diet, how they're living, how they're eating, how they're moving, because that's where the problem is going to be. And I find that in the holistic world, that actually doesn't end up panning out in the narrative. What it ends up panning out is, let's put you all on minerals, let's put you all on adaptogens, let's put you all on B vitamins, let's put you all on protein powder, and let's put you all on HIIT therapy, or HIIT training, I should say. And this actually doesn't work out well for patients.
Absolutely. I remember I went to a functional medicine doctor in the right before I crashed and burned, probably around 2007, 2008. And I remember leaving with, I think it was almost like $1,500 worth of supplements. Like everything was
I know tanked. Who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone was tanked with me. And it was just like, it wasn't until I got ulcerative colitis that I actually stepped back and was like, I'm just working 12-hour days and I'm actually training really hard and I need to chill out a little bit, And so it's like everything that they gave me made me feel better for about a week. It just propped me up, just like my performance enhancing drugs did. But then eventually the wheels came off the wagon because my engine was smoking and the fan belts were coming off. And I was just like, push the pedal harder, Well, Lord forbid you slow down and rest a little more and get some more sleep. I mean, who needs that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, in the holistic world, this happens a lot. It happens a lot. And I love this bodybuilder named Ronnie Coleman said, everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but nobody wants to lift these heavy weights. Yes. And it's so true, because the reality is that a lot of patients don't want to hear is what you're getting is what you're getting because of what you're doing. We don't know what you're doing that's causing the problem, but frequently it's something that you're very attached to. That's okay, but we may not be able to get you the results that you desire unless we can get rid of that, big problem. And that's frequently the fundamentals, because Ronnie was really getting at, you have to do the fundamentals. You cannot skip steps. At the end of the day, if you want to get big muscles, you got to lift some weights. And that's hard work. It takes diligence. It takes consistency. It takes habits, not just quick fixes, not just pills, not just supplements or coffee enemas or all other stuff that the holistic world gets into.
There's a great strength coach named Joel Jamieson, and he's made his living off training MMA athletes more efficiently. He's one of the guys that brought HRV to the forefront, measuring HRV to make sure that his athletes were adapting appropriately to the training he was giving them and if they had recovered or not. And Joel had a really, really great post about discipline and about, everybody's like, you got to train harder. It takes discipline to come into the gym when you're tired. And he was like, the true discipline is getting into bed early, being consistent with your sleep, eating good food, saying no to your friends when your friends want to go out at 2:00 in the morning or 1:00 in the morning. And you say, no, I'm going to go to bed. Your friends are like, let's have another 3 drinks. And you're like, I'm going to pass this time. That doesn't mean you can't do that ever. But the true discipline comes away from the gym, when you're by yourself, making sure that you don't have stuff in your pantry so you don't become a human vacuum cleaner at like 10:00 at night, which is something I do when I'm under a lot of stress. So that takes true discipline, whereas like going to the gym and turning the music up and getting after it, that I don't think it takes more discipline to treat your body well than it does to punish your body,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I see this as in terms of like the neuropsychology of this, because what people don't realize, because it's not readily apparent, is that a lot of the things that they get hooked on for their wellness is actually more about stimulating their reward centers in their brain,
dopamine,
than actually a rational course of action to get their illness back on track. So when I give somebody, say, hey, listen, take this thing, right? Oh, I'm doing something. Progress in the brain equates to reward. You finish mowing a row on the lawn, you feel a hit of dopamine. Not that I'm suggesting this, you do a line of Coke. Not only is the Coke actually like stimulating your dopaminergic neurons, but just the act of completing the thing stimulates these dopamine
Does
pathways.
that come with our wellness package?
And there's no
I think it'd be a lot of people sign up if that was a line of cocaine.
To have fun and be honest with people about the habits. But the reality is that everything that people get into for their wellness is like, oh, I finished my protein shake. Well, what else did that protein shake have in it? It had calories, and the calories raise your dopamine because you're feeding. Oh, I took and you start looking at the formulations of a lot of these products that people are selling and using for wellness. There's stuff in there that hits the pleasure centers of the brain. And that's not a mistake. There's cool, colorful colors. There's clever packaging. There's nice scents and smells and flavors. And no, I'm not telling you that you have to eat bland, boring food that comes in a totally, nondescript package. But I got to be honest with you, I buy more supplements from bulksupplements.com than pretty much anywhere else because they're very simple, they're very consistent, they have a good quality, and I don't see the superiority of the brands that have a lot of bells and whistles on the packaging. And I do the same thing with my patients. We're frequently reaching for the most bland, boring, unexciting packaged supplement, and it gets the job done because we're paying attention to the fundamentals over all these other things. And I could go on and on. I mean, one of the biggest things I see is people are going to the gym, right? What happens when you go to the gym? You raise your blood pressure, you work up a sweat, you release endorphins and enkephalins, and all these things are reward neurotransmitters. So you're getting this reward, and you're also getting the psychological benefit of saying, oh, I went to the gym today, that was good for me. So people fall into this, and then you try and frankly sell them getting out for the sunrise. And they say, man, that's like hard, and it's like I gotta set an alarm, or like I gotta go to bed earlier so I can stand to wake up that early, and oh man, like getting the coffee ready, it's like it's not rewarding the way that going to the gym is, the way that crushing a protein shake is, the way that having cruelty-free, non-GMO, fair trade, whatever.
Plus other people are patting you on the back, right? Oh yeah, you went to the gym. Yay, good job.
Exactly.
There's people at the gym telling you, yay, your coach is like, good, you came to the gym today. Right. Even though you're tired, go for it, go harder, do another set.
And that's funny because sometimes
nobody's standing outside when I get up in the morning and get out in the sun and it's like, yeah, dude, good job, you got your sunrise in today. Nobody's doing that, not yet at least.
But on that note, like this is where people need to like start to think about how they re-engineer their social life. Not that you may need to, but if you're surrounded by people who encourage you to do things that may not always be in your best interest, you actually have to start to retrain them as well as yourself, if possible, because people don't like to change. And you're not gonna be able to change everybody in the way you would want to. You already know this. But trying to explain to them why you're doing what you're doing and create positive experiences that are social, because a lot of you are going to the gym because you're craving social contact. A lot of you are, going out to the church picnic where you eat food that you shouldn't be eating because you're craving social contact and because it's very ostracizing to not eat what everyone else is eating, because we are a communal, variety of creatures. So we want to experience what everybody else is experiencing. There's so many examples of this. And it's also one of the most positive effects that you can have in your life is to get your family, your friends, your social circle to understand what should we really all be doing to actually be well together instead of having a lot of toxic habits that drag us all down together. Because frequently we find that in families, family members will sadly hold back patients from enacting these habits because they either don't perceive the value or they don't have the empathy necessary in order to really make allowances and also to encourage that person in order to make those changes to get
the the story of the crab bucket?
Yes, I do.
So you got a bucket of crabs. Why don't they all just crawl out? Because all the other crabs pull that crab back down. So, you see it a lot with people that are trying to make positive changes and everyone else starts making fun of them and, you're extreme or whatever. Or, people would make fun of my glasses. When I'd go out late at night, I'd have these are my like, go to dinner. They're not so crazy glasses, but I used to have darker ones and people would be like, you're a weirdo and all that stuff. And I really don't care. Like I've been called a weirdo for most of my life. So it really doesn't bother me, but I actually enjoy it. But a lot of people are very subconscious about, making changes in their life and what other people think of them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good summary of our overall philosophy. I mean, did we leave anything big and important out that we want to tell people before we jump into the actual nitty gritty of how they get well?
Everything has context. Okay. What you need to do might be totally different than what someone else needs to do. And once your bathtub is empty, then you can kind of figure out what you can get away with, right? It's not like we want to live this perfect. Human beings are extremely resilient. You can handle, like, if you look at like World War II and the Battle of Stalingrad, those people lived for months, like drinking vodka and eating a potato, like, and did relatively well considering the circumstances, right? So we have the ability to handle a massive amount of stress, right? So this isn't about living the perfect life. This is figuring out what works best for you so you can be a resilient human. This is to make you a better, more resilient human that can handle stress. And you make the choices when you want to do things. Hey, I want to have that pizza. Okay, have the pizza. Yeah. What are the things I can do to mitigate the pizza, right? Am I sleeping good? I've been outside. I've been working out decently. Yeah, I'm going to throw a pizza in every once in a while. No big deal. I might make mine cauliflower crust. It's a little hard, that I handle that a lot better than wheat crust, but every once in a while, I'll be somewhere where I have a piece of pizza. If my sleep has been really crappy lately and I have been under a lot of stress, I'll pass on it, Yeah. So it all depends on, sometimes you might have a couple drinks, sometimes you don't. It's all depends on you, and depends on what you're comfortable with and what works for you. And that's between you and Dr. Stillman or myself to help you figure out, because in the end, it's your life, right? And you have to figure out what works for you and your family and everybody else around you.
Yeah, and I like to tell patients that I'm not here to tell them what to do. I'm here to advise them of what I believe the consequences of their actions are, which is actually a lot more the way a lawyer operates than the way a doctor operates. And people sort of don't like that I waffle on things, but I'm very careful in what I say to be really clear with people about what I don't know. And this is one of the mistakes people make in the wellness space. They're very attracted to certainty. And I understand why, but that certainty, in my experience, always comes from somebody who presumes to know things that they cannot know. And I've had very bad experiences with those practitioners as a trainee, a medical student. I mean, there's just a lot of danger in that kind of philosophy. And because in the end, like you said, when we started out, everyone's a science experiment. And whether or not you like it or not, that's a fact.
And we're not going to know until we try.
Yeah. And this all varies across not only space, but time. So it's not just your genetics. Like we'll have cases where somebody will react differently to the same food in, from one latitude to another. They'll notice that the wheat in Europe doesn't aggravate their irritable bowel syndrome the way the wheat in the United States does.
You change the color of a room and it can affect the way people move.
Right. Now, right. I think
they have a more calm, relaxing color.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they score better on different movement tests. And
exactly.
Movement scores, right.
Yeah.
I blow a bowl horn, like while we're doing a test, or I start throwing things at you, or like make you annoyed, or I have a salivating pit bull in the room while you're doing your testing, you might score all wrong. So things can change very, very quickly, and they do constantly. Like if you look at strength, somebody's max strength number, like say you can deadlift 500 pounds, from day to day, minute to minute, you can go from being able to deadlift 540, I think it's 20 or 30% you can swing in either direction, minute to minute, based on what's happening in your life, right? So you're constantly evolving, constantly, all of a sudden you develop a weird allergy or whatever. It's just, we don't know why. Your body's just a system. And we do know that if your system is online and you breathe well and you sleep and your HRV is good and you can turn your parasympathetic system on, we can certainly say, hey, the chances of you having these issues is less. If your HRV score is 10 and your resting heart rate's 100 and your respiratory rate's like 30, probability is pretty good that you're going to have a major blowout. So this is all educationally, this is a giant science. This is why it's so cool and why Dr. Stillman and I love doing this, because it's not every case is the same. People will basically come to me and talk to me, and I will give them a couple suggestions, and I'll check on them a couple months later, and they're like, I felt so much better after I talked to you, and I did these simple things. That's all I needed. sometimes just telling people about your problems and feeling heard is enough to send you in the right direction. And people don't talk about that either. The emotional compact. I mean, there's so many different variables. We could like talk about this for like the next 10 years and not cover all the different psychosomatic, and it's just, there's so much stuff. But what are your big rocks, and what can you change? And what are the results after you change those big rocks?
Yeah. And what you mean by big rocks, because we got to explain what you mean by big rocks, because you forgot.
Oh, like your big rock, like, you know, for some people, if you're in an office all day, like you're there for 12 hours and you don't go outside, I'd say one of your big rocks is getting outside and getting a little sunlight, right?
Yeah.
Or like if you're a gamer and you're playing like, you know, games till 3 o'clock in the morning, well, your big rock's gonna be like, let's, you know, shut the computer off and get some sleep. Or
so the big rock,
you know, you're not eating, you're not, you know, you're exercising, you're not eating enough protein, or you're not getting, so everybody's job has context. Like you're an accountant, you sit all day, getting up, 4 or 5 times a day and going for a 5-minute walk might be your big rock. It just depends on the person, right?
Right. Yeah. It's the thing we got to move and change in some way.
My big rock is morning light, and then making sure that I come home at night and I relax and I breathe and I slow my breathing down and I shut off, and I get in a parasympathetic state. When I don't do that, shit goes bad. Like I start eating crap I shouldn't be eating. I start drinking. I start watching hours of YouTube videos. I mean, I just fall into this endless spiral. And whenever the time that happens, I have to go back to my big rocks. Usually I slacked on my big rocks, so.
Yeah. And so the goal when we're working with people is find the big rocks. You do it with,
And then we fine tune once we see what actually happens when we do those big rocks. And are the big rocks sustainable and consistent?
Yeah, exactly. Because you got to make choices eventually. If your job is what's killing you, what's your exit strategy from that job? Is it work until you die, or is it, work until you can lateral into another position? Yeah, I mean, there's so many other things we got to talk to people about. And that's where, it's more of a conversation for me about, what are your goals, as opposed to here's what you need to do right now. Not that I don't, give people clear advice on what to change, because of course I do that. But it really
making people aware so they can make an educated choice for themselves, right?
That's exactly right.
I hope you enjoyed the F-22 that just flew over.
Oh, that's funny. We didn't hear it. I didn't hear it at all.
You didn't hear it? Okay. Well, it was pretty loud. It might have broke the sound barrier.
Nice. All right. Well, Jim, thanks for joining me. Everyone,
you're welcome.
Post your questions in the comments to this video. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a great day.